In the bustling area of Bel Air, on Palmetto and Maple Ridge Street, in Houston, Texas, lived the Armstrong family. Antonio Armstrong Sr. had been born on October 15, 1973 in Houston, Texas. While Antonio had been a native, his wife Dawn Renee Whitley Armstrong was born in Atchison County, Kansas. Dawn was born on February 15, 1974. Antonio Sr. studied at Texas A&M under a full scholarship and then went on to play professional football for a while as a linebacker for the Miami Dolphins in the 90s. The couple together co-owned and ran a business named First Class Training, a gym in the Bel Air area. When the couple got together, Dawn had a son from a previous relationship. They then went on to have 2 more children, Antonio Jr., who at the time of this incident had been 16 years old, and a daughter who at the time had been 12, named Keyra. Everyone around the family stated that the couple had a very happy marriage and family life. Josh had been the name of the eldest son. And up until 3 weeks before this incident, Josh had lived with the family but moved out not too far from the family's home. On the night of July 28, 2016, everyone began winding down and getting ready to go into their beds. It had been around 10 p.m. at this time. Keyra states that she set the home security system and everyone was off into their rooms. So just to give a little layout of the house, Dawn and Antonio's room had been on the 2nd floor and their daughter's room had just been down the hall from theirs, while AJ's room had been on the 3rd floor. As I stated before, Josh used to live in the home, but he had just moved out recently, so Antonio Jr. had the entire room to himself. The home had been rather quiet, except for 16-year-old AJ on the phone with his girlfriend Kate. They had been up texting at the time. At 1:40 a.m., dispatchers of Houston Police Department received a call from 16-year-old AJ Armstrong, stating that he heard gunshots in his home. AJ states that he ran upstairs to the 2nd floor to see his parents' bedroom door open. AJ claims that it had been odd because his parents never left it open at night. So the Armstrong family had a home security system that had sensors on every external door as well as motion detectors that detected from the inside. That night of the murders, none of the door sensors had been triggered. The only system notifications had been from when Keyra said it and when AJ went to go open the door to let the police in. The windows in the home were also locked with their screens still intact and secured. It wasn't possible to investigators for a killer to go out the window to escape. Now, the 911 call between AJ and the dispatcher lasted a total of 16 minutes. AJ stated that he heard gunshots and he says that he went to the 2nd floor where his parents and his sister's room had been. He states that although he saw his parents' room open, he didn't enter the room at all. AJ was asked by the dispatcher if he had been in need of medical assistance, and his response had been yes. Most of what I could find of the 911 call is from other videos, so I'll be dropping little clips of it and also reading from my notes and what was said from the trial.
Does it sound like a handgun, rifle, or shotgun?
I'm not out there. I know my dad has
Okay, can you hear anything else that's going on?
I do.
Towards the
Your name?
AJ.
Any medical attention needed?
I heard gunshots, so I don't really know.
In your parents' bedroom?
Yes. Your doors are
Does it sound like a handgun, rifle, or shotgun?
I'm not out there. I'm not anything like that. I know my dad has
They're asking you to step out of the house.
So I get my sister?
Hold on.
I need to leave the house?
Yes.
What about my little sister?
Let me ask. And she's on the second floor?
Yeah. Keyra, you gotta get up. Come on, you gotta get up. Come on. Keyra, I need you to get up. Keyra, I need you to get up. Come with me. Come with me. You gotta go outside. I was up in the bathroom and I heard gunshots and all. You gotta go outside and figure out what's going on. Just grab my hand and stay behind me. Please just stay there.
Hey, I'm the one that called. Keyra, come on.
Now, during AJ's 911 call, he states almost in a whisper that sounded like he was responding to the dispatcher, letting her know he had ringing in his ear. For most of the 911 call, AJ hid out until the police came. At a point in time during the 16-minute phone call, AJ wakes his 12-year-old sister up to inform her about what had occurred. At the end of that call, AJ opened up the door, disarming the security system, allowing the police in and him and his sister out. The police arrived on the scene not long after, with AJ and his sister leaving the house to meet them. To ensure no one had been in the house other than the people AJ stated, the police did a quick sweep. I would also like to mention that during AJ's wait for the police, he did call and inform his brother on what had been going on. Around the same time police came, so did Josh. Josh had been attending the college, Blinn, and had moved back to Houston 3 weeks prior, according to AJ. At that moment, he had been attending an art institute. It was said by his brother that he didn't live more than 40 minutes from the Armstrong residence. So as stated before, at the time of the incident, there had only been 4 people in the home that the police knew of, so they did a quick sweep to confirm. The parents had been found in their bedroom just before 2 a.m. They found Antonio Sr. in bed, literally clinging to life. He had a slight pulse, so the responders on the scene attempted to get him immediate medical attention. He had been shot with a single gunshot wound to the head. Beside him lied his wife, Dawn. She had been declared dead at the scene. She received 2 gunshot wounds to the head, so altogether it had been 3 shots total. The killer attacked both while they were sleeping. The couple was found with pillows over their faces. Dawn had been shot first, according to the police. They believed the 2 shots prompted Antonio Sr. to wake up and eventually meet his demise. Continuing to walk through the house, the responding officers noticed drawers in the kitchen halfway opened. Nothing else in the home seemed to be disturbed at that time. From one of the drawers, there had been a notepad and pen retrieved. It had just been left sitting out on the counter. The police came to the conclusion that no robbery had occurred. On the note, someone roughly wrote down, "I have been watching you, get me?" It seemed to the responders someone had wrote over a lot of times as if attempting to conceal the handwriting. On the counter next to the notepad sat a gun said to belong to Antonio Sr. The gun had been a .22 caliber pistol, which had also been the murder weapon. Antonio Sr. had been known to keep the gun at his bedside nightstand, just as AJ stated in his 911 call. AJ was placed into handcuffs and taken into police custody. The police immediately wanted to separate the siblings to get statements. In the early morning hours of the next day, HPD questioned the 16-year-old. Investigators states that AJ seemed emotionless, with no tears over the loss of his mother, but of course everyone grieves differently. At this time, his father, Antonio Sr., had still been in the hospital fighting for his life. During the initial interrogation between detectives and AJ, they first asked how his relationship with his parents were, just trying to piece together what happened. AJ states that they were close. He had a close-knit bond with his mother, brother, father, and his sister. 5 hours after the incident, during the interview, he tells homicide detectives that he heard gunshots as he had been making his way downstairs. He states that he had been about 4 or 5 stairs down and happened to look down and see someone running. AJ says that this figure had been wearing a mask, and the mask had been made to where you can only see the eyes and the mouth, but to AJ it looked like a bad guy.
Shots. And I was making my way down the stairs, and that's when I heard the gunshots. When I got like 4 or 5 stairs down, and I like looked.
How many you heard? How many you heard?
I mean, I think I heard 2, but it may have been 3. I'm not really like like 100% positive, but like I know it's 2 or 3.
And then I saw the masked man running from a parent's bedroom, and then I called 911.
And like I saw someone like coming out, so I just took off back upstairs. They had it was like a mask, and like you could only see the eyes and the mouth, but he looked like a black guy, but I'm not like 100% positive, but I'm pretty sure it was an African American, and like I'd say like 6 feet maybe, somewhere around there. I couldn't give you like an age range. I didn't really like get to see his face or anything like that.
So the masked man had been pretty much introduced during the interrogation and not during the 911 call. Investigators questioned a lot of what AJ had been saying during the questioning. They felt that it had been too much inconsistencies. The Harris County District Attorney Assistant, Mr. Jordan, stated that for anyone, if there had been a masked man in the home and you felt that he just hurt your parents and your sister is also present, why wouldn't that be the first thing that you mention in the 911 call? Mr. Jordan also states in a documentary that I will be linking below that during the 3 trials they had, the defense didn't bring light to what was said by AJ because to them it made no sense on why AJ would leave that out during the 911 call. HPD also thought it had been weird how AJ been able to know not only that his sister was alive, but it had been safe enough to pass his parents' room and get to her. They stated that he knew that he didn't have to look into his parents' room because he knew they were already dead. I'd also like to state that while being interviewed, AJ's grandma states that she believes AJ had so many consistencies in his story because he had only been 16 at the time and scared. Now, I am going to be going ahead and showing some more clips from AJ's interrogation and some of the things that he states to HPD. And in this clip that I am going to be showing you guys, they start to ask him about the bullet that had been found in his room, which had also been the loft. So I am going to go ahead and show that clip to you guys.
It comes from the loft, which
There's
is
a
your
bullet
bedroom.
hole in the ceiling.
And it comes through the floor. From the loft, from your room upstairs.
Yeah.
Where your room
on
is?
the third floor.
Yeah.
There's a bullet hole.
And then on the floor, there's an actual bullet that was actually fired.
How long has that been there?
Well, that's why we're talking to you, because there's fresh sheetrock on the floor.
Right.
So, and that's kind of what we're getting at. There's things out there that we're trying to figure out how this has happened. You know, if there's 2 gunshots or 4 gunshots.
Right.
How do we have one that's coming from the room upstairs, and then we've got other ones in there?
I can explain the gun from the room upstairs. It was like 2, maybe 3 weeks ago. Like me and one of my friends was just like playing around, and they were about to leave, and he was like, "Hey, well, not really. He was like me. I was like, "Hey, like, have you ever shot a gun before?" And they were like, "Nah, I've never done it." And I was like, "Do you want me to show you how to?" And like I like went and checked the 3 places, and the gun was under my dad's bed, and I like laid the pillow. I laid my pillow and then like a blanket over it and a blanket under it, thinking like that would stop it, but I guess it did not stop it.
See, and that kind of goes back to what we were saying just a minute ago. You know, because a few minutes ago you said that you haven't seen it, you haven't shot it since you were a kid, and then now we kind of give you a little more, and then it's like, oh, wait a minute. So, you know,
I understand.
We don't want to keep getting deeper into this because there's more. I mean, that's the thing is, and ultimately, you know, if the gun was fired tonight, you know, again, the GSR test is going to show it.
Exactly.
So to say that you didn't, or it was fired.
I didn't fire it tonight.
No.
Last time I fired was like 2-3 weeks ago, when I put a bullet. I guess my parents just never saw that, because I mean that was a while ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But ultimately, that's what I'm saying. Is even if you wash your hands, whatever it's still going to show.
Right.
Okay. So that's why I'm saying is, you know,
something from like 3 weeks ago. You think?
No.
Oh,
you fired a gun tonight.
So before this interrogation with HPD, AJ states that he has never touched his dad's gun. I believe he said since he were like a kid or something, but during this interrogation with HPD, he states that he has recently, after they told him that they found a bullet in his room. So that just gives you some of the issues that and consistencies that HPD found with what AJ had been saying. They also had not been buying the story that he told them about him playing with the gun with his friend just about 3 weeks earlier. But HPD still had no concrete evidence to pin AJ. AJ goes on to tell detectives that if he were to be tested by them, they would find no residue, powder, whatever that'll link him to this because he had nothing to do with it. He also states that his brother thought something was missing as well, but understood how him lying to the police looked. Now, on the second floor landing, police noticed a piece of carpet that had been burnt. They stated that the area smelled strong of accelerant, gasoline. AJ states that the carpet had been burned a few days before the murders, on a Tuesday, he believes. He stated that he and his father had smelled it a few days before and had been questioning it. But police believes that AJ had been trying to create a trap, allegedly, for no one to be able to escape on that floor. Back at the crime scene, there had also been pillows and blankets found with bullet holes in them. Detectives feel AJ had been using that as a test trial to see if the shots would be heard. Now, as stated before, the Armstrong family had an ADT security system. A lot of people, including a police legal analyst, feels that the alarm not tripping all night is the police's key evidence. It shows no one came in nor out of the residence. During the trial, AJ's attorney, Chris Collins, stated that both ADT and Alarm.com testified that they didn't perform any testing at all on the alarm equipment at the Armstrong residence, nor was any testing done on the accuracy of the records contained in the documentation. He believes that AJ's life was being ruined over an alarm's faulty system. AJ's grandma states that his attorney showed evidence that their records were conflicting. She also states that when the officers asked Keyra about the alarm system, she stated that sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. The alarm system had been a huge part of this case. During the trial, the prosecutors had experts and so did Alarm.com.
What do we know about his sister? And then it became very clear as to who committed the crime.
Alarm information. They have an expert, you have an expert, you're showing faults. They're trying to show that these faults don't mean anything. The house was sealed up. Do you feel like you had the right experts?
So how I answered that is the way we prepared for trial 3 was based on trial 1 and 2, the things that we did and we know that worked. Then we got into trial and they hired another expert, and the first expert in the second trial said he changed his testimony.
We found out in between trial 2 and trial 3 how much Jason DaCosta from Alarm.com really knew. And we flew him down to Houston and we met with him and we spent hours with him, and after that we walked away from that meeting saying we got it, because the alarm system was working.
Alarm.com as VP of the organization comes, and I think he helped prosecutors a lot. They had a board which showed all of the goings and happenings of the Armstrong home. He said their home was extremely active. And then prosecutors used that to kind of narrow the times to show the jurors that this alarm system worked flawlessly. Then the defense came back and showed them a few points where there were issues with the alarm system.
So during trial number 2, an expert agrees that the system had 77 errors. And then, taking everyone by surprise, in the third trial, that same expert states that what he said previously wasn't accurate. Prosecutors feels as if the second expert brought in and the records weren't reliable. They also didn't like the way it had been presented to them. They also feel that the records aren't really needed to nail the coffin against AJ. There were still other things to factor in to see whether AJ had been guilty or not. Let's remember that AJ didn't have any gunpowder residue on him, there wasn't a blood splatter on him, his parents' blood wasn't on his hands, his clothes, nor his hair. There was also no disposable clothing at the scene nor around it. There hadn't even been any cleaning products in the sink, nothing to indicate that this 16-year-old committed this crime. The crime scene, DNA was collected from the notepad and the gun, coming back a match, of course, to the Armstrong family, but didn't narrow it down to just one suspect, one person. DNA had also been extracted from other areas of the residence, but the results had been the same. AJ had been facing an automatic life sentence with the chance of parole for at least 40 years. The trial begins in March of 2019, but back in 2017, the judge certifies AJ, who at the time happened to be 17, as an adult in the killings of his parents. In April of that same year, a judge sets AJ's bond at $200,000. He was released after months of being in police custody. He was ordered to wear an ankle monitor until his trial in 2019. The trial begins with AJ and his lawyer, along with AJ's family, present in the courtroom. He actually walks in with his paternal grandmother, but his family members had been there for his support. The camera pans over to AJ's face, and he of course looks very worried to me and scared of what would happen. And I believe at this time he was 17 or 18 or going on 18, and the trial is about an hour long, and I will of course link the video down in the description box below so you guys can go ahead and watch it for yourselves. It is very interesting, and I feel to understand this case more, you should definitely go watch it for yourselves. So the judge on this case had been Judge Kelly Johnson, and she comes on the screen and she begins to introduce the case to everyone. She goes ahead and asks for the verdict, and the first one up to speak is the prosecutors. He starts with speaking on the alarm being set by Keyra, with her leaving it on stay mode. He goes on to state that stay mode alerts the system that the residents didn't want any unknown assailant to enter. But it also notified the system that any motion detected in the house shouldn't trigger anything to be reported. As we know, in the residence at the time was Antonio, his wife Dawn, and of course their 2 children. The prosecutor goes on to say that the alarm did exactly what it was supposed to. He also states how AJ called 911 at 1:40 a.m. and basically recounts most of what I said earlier. So I am going to go ahead and highlight the key parts of each trial and also link them down below so you can watch it on your own. But I am not telling the entire video frame by frame. I'm just going to go ahead and just point out key factors during the trial and talk about them. So the prosecutors begin their argument with the notepad and the poorly disguised handwriting, and how it made no sense to police that a killer would come in and have time to write a note after committing a murder, and then after leave without being detected. He also brought up the bullet in the carpet and a hole in the ceiling, and how the hole had been covered up by socks. The prosecutor goes on to talk about how Dawn's body was discovered and what led them to want to even separate the children and treat AJ as a suspect. So he brings up how AJ had to manually wake his sister and how oblivious she was to the scene. It was also brought up that again, the windows were intact and the alarm had to be disabled when the police came, and detectives put 2 and 2 together. And while collecting DNA and evidence, police of course discovered AJ's DNA everywhere because of course he lived there and they expected that, but it wasn't like an unknown DNA in the home, so just please keep that in mind. That amongst other things made it very easy for detectives to feel as if AJ was a suspect.
And what the police find when they go in, of course, they find Dawn, who is now dead, and they find Antonio Sr., who is fighting for his life in the bed. But they search the house and they find nobody. What they do find is they look at the windows and they find that they're very nice window treatment, shades that seem to be perfectly in place. And they find windows closed. And they find windows locked from inside. And what they find is the house is the same way it was at 952. The killer didn't come from outside of the house. Well, another thing that they find is they find the gun on the left behind by the killer. It doesn't necessarily make sense to them because they're not used to the killer being within. They're used to somebody coming in, so the killer left the gun. And it's on the kitchen counter, and it's with a little note that's kind of scribbled. Looked like somebody tried to do a, I'm 4 years old and I write like this. I've been watching you for a long time. Somebody, the police are thinking somebody that came in and committed a murder, left the gun, and left a note to scare the people that he just killed?
So I'm not sure if I mentioned this before, but on the notepad it stated, I have been watching you for a long time. And some other things that bothered the prosecutors that they brought up during trial had been the alarm system, of course. As I stated before, the alarm system was a huge part of this case because of its faults. He led his argument with first letting us know how the system worked.
And sure enough, the alarm system, actually the Armstrongs paid for an upgrade and it was monitored. And even when it was set to we're staying home, the motion detectors inside still detected motion. It didn't call the police, but the alarm company, the computer, gets a notice when the motion detectors detect something. And there are two motion detectors in the house. One is to cover the downstairs, and it's kind of put in a corner up there, and it covers the downstairs area, including the entrance from the garage and from the front door. It'd be just like this. This is the front door, this is the garage door. The detector's there, and it kind of covers that area. And then there's these stairs that go right up to the second floor, right after you enter the house, okay? And so it kind of covers that area. And then you go up, and in the corner on the second story, where the murders occurred, there's another detector. And that detector, it's also up in a corner, and you'll see it. And that detector catches two areas. There's a hallway outside of the master bedroom. And that detector catches two areas. It catches if someone goes up the stairs, they get up the stairs, and then they turn the corner, the detector on the second floor catches them. So if you come from downstairs, you get caught. And then on the other end of that hallway, so that's on this end of the hallway, you come up the stairs and you turn towards the master bedroom, you get caught.
So after explaining stay mode and the layout of the home, he starts to introduce the motion detectors inside the home and lets us know that the killer came from upstairs. Now, from what we know about this case so far and the layout of the Armstrong home, we know that AJ's room has been upstairs. Now at 1:09 a.m., the motion detectors in the house goes off to detect someone moving inside the home. This is happening although none of the doors nor windows were open. The motion occurred on the second floor. He states that it had been the defendant that he believes came from downstairs from his bedroom and was picked up on the system. At 1:25 a.m., the downstairs motion detector goes off again. At this point, no doors, no windows had been opened still. At 1:40 a.m., we know that AJ went ahead and called 911 to report that he heard shots in his parents' room. So they wanted to really narrow down what happened between the motion at 1:09 a.m. and the phone call at 1:40 a.m. The prosecutor also mentions that when the police arrived, Dawn and Antonio had pillows covering their heads, as if someone didn't want to see what they did. And as you will see in most cases, this is usually a sign of remorse. In his closing argument, he goes on to state that when the alarm had been set at 9 that night and the family was soundly in their beds with their parents most likely thinking their kids were home and safe, and so were they, completely unprepared and unaware of what would happen. Now, AJ's defense comes in and he begins with stating that he feels AJ had been targeted since the beginning, stating that just within minutes of arriving, the police looked at AJ as a suspect. He goes on to say that an officer will testify that it took 11 minutes for them to suspect him, even before any evidence had been processed or collected. The defense felt as if they created a confirmation bias immediately in a high-profile murder case. And for those who don't know and have never heard the term, confirmation bias is the tendency to seek out and prefer information that supports a pre-existing belief. As a result, one may tend to ignore any information that contradicts those beliefs. The defense basically feels that they stated an opinion without all relevant information. So the attorney that had been speaking was Rick DiToto, so from now on I'll be saying DiToto when referring to the defense. So Attorney DiToto states the prosecutor Ruru described a murder of two people at close range, but AJ's fingerprints weren't anywhere. No DNA of AJ was on the gun, bullets, or magazine. He brings up how Mr. Burrow stated AJ could have washed his hands and wiped it down, but he argues that and says the homicide detectives looked in the sinks and there was no indication that he washed his hands. He then goes on to state that when you shoot a gun, the gas expands and it gets everywhere. He said that especially in a closed environment with no wind or anything, there will be a greater chance of that residue appearing on AJ, but even in the photos, it was nothing. He says that HPD had all the time to find evidence that AJ did it, but no bloody clothes were found anywhere. DiToto says that they stated they couldn't search further, which he felt was BS. The defense goes ahead and brings up a lady who was a doctor and knew Antonio Sr. through her boyfriend. He said that this lady received a note on her car after coming home from a vacation out of the country. And around this time, AJ had still been locked up. The note that she had found read, "I've been watching you." The same woman's boyfriend at the time happened to be building a gym and saw on the window in dust something that said, "We are watching you." And this is while AJ is still in police custody.
He states that this wasn't even brought to anyone's attention, basically hidden by the prosecutors. After Antonio Sr. passed, his gym had been broken into. Detectors said that the evidence shows that they had been looking for something. He says that these were masked men. Piggybacking off of AJ's story, he said during his interrogation, AJ's relationship with his parents had also been brought up, obviously because everything needed to be looked over.
Detector also lets us know AJ's girlfriend, who is also now the mother of his child, and her mother as well, would be taking the stand. He states that from their accounts, AJ seemed normal. He was goofing around like usual, laughing and joking. It was said that her and AJ had been texting up until minutes before the crime took place.
The defense had basically been arguing that it had been possible that the same masked man that AJ saw that night could have been the same masked man that broke into Antonio's gym. But let's just keep in mind that that night the security system had not been triggered, if we are going by what the security system said. Overall, Detector says that he feels this just didn't sound like someone that would just be talking to his girlfriend and their mother all jolly and then kill their parents 30 minutes later. He then goes ahead and brings up the alarm system and says we will see evidence that what was told by the company had it been accurate or reliable, especially with them saying how it functions. He also drops that they weren't even able to get the records in time.
Detector states that they have records, but some were destroyed by the alarm company and they didn't get those. He feels that the most important thing we will be hearing is the access to the Armstrong home. Now, outside of the garage door, there is a keypad. From that garage, you were able to enter the home. The relatives of the Armstrong family said that lots of people had access to the house from the garage door, and that door was usually unlocked. The defense goes ahead and brings up Josh, who was Don's son from a previous relationship. He talks about how Josh had been in and out of a psychiatric facility for the past 3 years. Detector said Josh is suicidal, homicidal, and also catatonic. Josh had been hearing a female's voice in his head that he was trying to kill. The night of the crime, Josh had only been interviewed for 3 to 4 minutes. They even bagged his hand as well to make sure none of the residue would rub off.
Now, these are things that I didn't even know personally, like the whole using the plastic bag for the residue. But Detector states that Josh only lived 2 minutes away from the Armstrong residence. He states that you can run there and reach his home in less than a minute, showing us how far their homes had been from each other. Detector also states that HPD asked what Josh's alibi was, and he refused to answer them. Before going on recess, the judge states that they'll be calling their first witness to the stand.
So it took 3 jurors to make a decision on AJ's case. Another part of AJ's defense comes onto the screen, and he also speaks about the alarm system. He states as well that there was no signs of forced entry, the alarm system was on, and they knew that because AJ had to disarm it. He also states that the expert brought in from Delaware that worked for ADT, whom name was Mr. Harris, states that he didn't know if the alarms were tested or how far of a range they tested, which is very, very important if we are going by what the alarm says. He states that the motion could have been picked up from clothes or just anything. He also states Mr. Harris acknowledged that motion detectors can be avoided by wearing certain types of clothing. He begins to recall Mr. Brewer demonstrating that if you wear a mask to cover your face, then it will radiate heat, which he states is simply not true. He says not only that Mr. Harris acknowledged that you can avoid the motion detectors because they go off of infrared difference and the heat signatures it picks up. Your face has a certain amount of heat, and if you cover that up, it blocks the motion detector. They then go on to move into Exhibit 999, which is a pretty important document. So now the prosecutor comes back to the floor. He starts to speak on the defense name calling and basically just deflecting during his argument, only focusing on trying to prove his case but ignoring the evidence. So the burned carpet incident came up in court as well, you know, the rubbing alcohol bottle with gasoline in it. He begins to play bits of the interrogation they had with AJ 5 hours after the murders. The part where AJ basically stated that he told his father, Antonio Sr., he didn't know where it came from, although he did. The prosecutor goes on to say that Dawn comes into the courtroom through the trial as well, basically stating that she was speaking from the grave. Says that we will be hearing and seeing text messages between AJ and his mother. He also states that there had been searches on the family's iPad about how to detonate a car bomb. He also brings up the fact that AJ actually shot the murder weapon in his room, stating again he felt like that was a test fire, all the while referring back to what he said during interrogation. Now let's talk about those text messages between AJ and his mother and father. So day 8 of the trial, we got a closer look at those messages between AJ and his parents. It was stated that most of the messages between them were about bad grades. They even called him a quote-unquote disappointment. The prosecutor also showed text messages that started up to 10 months before the murders took place. In most of the text messages, AJ's father would try and say encouraging things to him, seeming forgiving. Mom, on the other hand, was very serious about AJ's education. As a parent, you just want your child to have the absolute best. You want the best for them. You want your child to do well. And according to the article, Antonio Sr. stated that, quote, "You can't feel hopeless. You have to believe in yourself like we believe in you." But in the middle of the school year, in 2016, AJ's grades had just gotten worse. Antonio Sr. sent his son a message stating, "AJ, really bro? I just don't get it. Zeros, missing assignments, emails from teachers. I am tired. Really tired. Nothing to say." Dawn's messages to her husband was also brought to the court. She stated, "AJ is starting to lie. I am disappointed. He doesn't care about anything. He's a bold-faced liar, like I have never seen before." At the end of 2016, AJ was kicked out of his high school for the bad grades. His parents were, of course, pissed. He even had been breaking curfew, overspending, and possibly smoking in their home. Now, 8 weeks before the murder, AJ sends his parents a text message stating, "I'm not even gonna try and say sorry for everything because right now I know it doesn't mean anything to you guys. I know I need a major life change right now." Dawn wasn't pleased at all, and what mother would be? Responds to AJ in text, and she lets him know, "We gave you all and the best we had. We wanted the best for you. We provided the best education, bought you a great car to celebrate you. We tried to be open with you and what was important to you, and all you do is lie to us, scheme behind our backs, chose to piss on all we tried to do. Beyond disappointed. I will never understand why you are a liar and do not work hard in school. You do not want to do right or do good. I am so heartbroken, but it is what it is."
Or anything like that. No, it's about him and what was going on in his life and what was important to him. So now we're at what? The days and weeks beforehand, the iPad. We know that, and this is concrete evidence. This is, like I said, his family, they're always going to fight for him. But that's why this evidence is so important. On the 26th, he lit the house on fire. And we know that that's when it happened. That's concerning, isn't it? Does it mean every kid that pours gasoline at the top of the stairs of his house when his parents are there and his sister's with his grandma, does that mean that they're going to end up killing their parents? Not everyone. But isn't it telling that this is just a few days beforehand?
The defense tried to show the fact that there were more than 80,000 pages of phone records, but of course the prosecutors picked and chose what they wanted to talk about. And I think they were really just picking what they felt was, relevant for this case, so I guess that's what the prosecutors have been trying to do. AJ's defense also pointed out the loving texts and regular concerned messages between them. As stated before, though, there are numerous messages between AJ and his parents regarding his troubling ways. On April 16, 2016, in a group text with AJ, his mom, and dad, there were text messages received stating, "I am sick of getting reports about your silly crap you're doing. Last warning." And those messages had been from his father. His mother, Dawn, then goes in to chime in and states that she agrees with the father. They spoke about his lying and scheming and even added the fact that he doesn't deserve his car. AJ had even snuck out, and I'm sure we all did this in our childhood, but AJ lies and tells his parents that the alarm was lying and that he didn't leave. His mother stated, "Yes, you did. I checked the alarm. She said the alarm doesn't lie. You do." In that same month and year, April 2016, AJ expressed to his girlfriend, who is now his wife, that he was very upset for always getting into trouble by his mother, stating it's pissing him off. In May of that year, AJ had also got his rights to drive to school terminated by the school because he was driving reckless on campus. AJ's first 2 trials ended in hung juries. His older brother and Dawn's son from a previous relationship was also brought up in court, where they stated that Keyra testified about her brother's weird behavior when he returned from college. She stated to them that his mood was different, his hygiene changed, he just wasn't the same person he was before he left.
After the murders occurred, Josh attempted to burn his grandmother's house down. He also told people that he had been hearing a woman's voice in his head. Grandmother Kay Winston states that Josh didn't even visit his father in the hospital at that time. The defense wanted a motive, and the prosecutors felt the why or the motive in this case did not matter. It's the simple fact that the murders happened in the first place that mattered. He says that the motive in this case isn't the issue. He brings up the fact that Josh never did a practice shot, but we know who did. And this is during the prosecutor's closing argument. Now he lets us know that AJ also had the gun before the incident, used it, and lied to the police about it prior. He even started the fire and used the pillow to put the fire out, the pillows being significant in this case. The prosecutor again felt as if this was AJ's test shot. He wanted to see if the shots would be heard from maybe his sister's room or from anyone else. The prosecutor goes on to say that we know AJ had no residue on him, no lead or other elements consistent with shooting a gun on his hands. But it did show up on his clothing. It showed up on the red shirt he wore that night. The prosecutor says that the concentration was on the right side. Now, Antonio Jr. is right-handed, and he mentions this to Officer Jamie James. The practice shot shows evidence that the last person to have the murder weapon was AJ. We know this because he told us. There was no evidence to show that anyone else had the murder weapon prior. Bullets also retrieved from the parent's body had lead, the same lead found on. We also go on to learn that Josh was actually adopted. Some other statements made by the prosecutors were actually disregarded in the courtroom by the judge. The prosecutors didn't feel as if Josh was mentally capable due to his mental illness to execute this murder out. He says that this was a precision killing. His partner then comes to the floor to speak, and she brings up the text messages that I spoke on earlier. She also talks about the fact that 3 days before the murder, on the 27th, when his sister Keyra was at their grandma and he and his parents were home alone, just the three of them, he tried to set the house on fire. She says that the probable cause could have been him going through the ups and downs of getting his phone taken away, not being able to see his girlfriend, his parents not fighting for him to attend another good elite school, or even his parents, especially his mom, always expressing their disappointment in his actions. She said all of this in AJ's mind could have definitely been motive for him. She says that even though the defense felt Josh might have did it, allegedly, due to his mental illness, there was no record that had indicated Josh had a mental illness. She brings up messages between Keyra and Josh where she asked to go to the movies and he took her. She said between those messages and other things, she said there was no evidence from the last 3 years that he had any mental illness. According to prosecutors, the messages are communication proof from the family that Josh didn't have any anger or indication of mental illness at the time of the murders. But she says that AJ wasn't happy during the time of the murder. He was grounded, couldn't drive his car at the time, his girlfriend had been at a party, and the prosecutors felt he wanted to be anywhere but home that day. His sister asked him that day around 8 p.m. if he could pick her up, but he told her that he couldn't. He told her that his mom said that he couldn't use the car and drive.
There's been something made of Josh about this. Josh is not blood. Josh was adopted. From the kindness of these two people. Taking him like a true son. But he is different. He knows he's different. The defense has subpoena power, just like the state. If he could help the defendant in this situation, don't you know that it's an aggressive defense, that there would have been...
Stay the record.
Yes, Your Honor.
I'm sorry, I need a little bit on my objection.
All right, sustained.
Ask the jury to disregard the prosecutor's last statement.
Ladies and gentlemen, please disregard the last statement made by the prosecutor.
I move for a trial.
It's all a rabbit trail.
His sister went ahead and asked their parents for permission for him to collect her from their grandparents' house. At this time, he is also texting his older brother Josh, and at that time, Josh is in school and he is also working. AJ asks Josh if he can drive his car, but his brother tells him no, that he can't, because not only does he drive reckless, but their parents said that he did not want AJ driving. The prosecutor states that it sounded more like a protective older brother rather than someone ready to kill their parents, but says AJ's freedom was restricted.
She also makes a statement saying that, of course, his family will go on stand and defend AJ because they don't want to lose another family member. The prosecutor also brought up the timeline and felt as if the time AJ shot his parents and the time between his door opening and motioning for him to go downstairs and the 911 call was him waiting for his father's demise. So going ahead and moving on to who took the stand and what was said, and we are then going to go ahead and close out the video with the final verdict. So AJ's two former coaches took the stand. The first coach, the former head football coach at Lamar High School, took the stand and said it appeared that AJ had a great relationship with his parents. The second coach from Kincaid, a private elite school and also the school that AJ got kicked out of, said one day he had been on the phone with Antonio Sr. and overheard Don yelling at AJ in the background, letting him know that he won't be getting another chance at being in a good school. AJ's sister also took the stand on day 11 of the trial. She talks about setting the alarm, and she also says the time he woke her up for them to meet the officers outside, AJ seemed frantic and excited. She said that she remembered being very hysterical and also remembers standing with him before the officers took him. She was asked to describe Josh and his interactions with the family. Keyra states that Josh was there, but at the same time he wasn't. He was distant and basically thought he was treated differently because they weren't related by blood, according to her. She spoke on her and Josh having sibling rivalry, and she also stated that he had been doing drugs to the point where it changed his appearance. She says that AJ's relationship with their parents was normal, according to her, despite the arguments. Keyra states that although he was slacking, he was excited about starting at a new school. She also talked about the Homeland Security, and she also states that on that day, she had been staying at her grandma's earlier. She asked AJ to come get her, and she was there for some time and wanted to come home. She said that after getting permission from his parents, when AJ came to collect her, he had been in an upbeat mood. Before heading to bed, she says she hung with her mom for a little. She says that the next thing she remembers is AJ waking her up. She states that she didn't know what was going on, but she saw the police. She also testified that when Josh arrived at the home, he was smelling like, and in her words, acting high. She said that AJ acted, quote-unquote, a little concerned. She also says that she remembered seeing her dad, who was wounded but quickly fading, being brought out of the house on a stretcher. She was visibly emotional, of course, and she let the courts know. She also stated that she had not seen her mother's body. That night, she was later interviewed by police and then released to her grandparents. Keyra goes on to say Josh became violent, used drugs excessively in the months following the murders, and she also states that he had mixed personalities. So there were other people who did take the stand other than Keyra and the two coaches as well, so we are going to be moving on to that. So on day 2 of AJ's third capital murder trial, there had been a new witness that took the stand. HPD officer Logan Weber didn't testify in AJ's first 2 trials, but did tell the court in the trial what happened the morning he took AJ to police headquarters. So he didn't testify in the first 2 trials, but he did testify in the third one. He stated that AJ didn't have any blood on his fingers at the time, and he also testified that he saw no blood on AJ's clothes or on him for the 6 hours that they had been together. Officer Logan Weber speaks about how he and his partner checked Armstrong into the building. He also labeled Armstrong's t-shirt with an orange visitor bag. So Officer Logan Weber speaks about how he and his partner checked Armstrong into the building. He also labeled Armstrong's t-shirt with an orange visitor badge. Now, there was new blood evidence that was said to be found on the back of the badge after peeling it off of AJ's t-shirt, and this was actually discovered by a state expert. Those stains were tested, and prosecutors said it's the blood of his father, Antonio Armstrong Sr. Defense attorney Mr. Rick D. Toto had Weber physically show jurors how the badge was placed on AJ that morning. The officer insisted that he could have touched the adhesive part, but didn't have any blood on his fingers at the time, as I stated before. So the other witness to be called had been Don Chica, and I hope I pronounced her name right, Dayon, and this had been Antonio Sr.'s sister. She speaks on going with Mrs. Armstrong to pick up Josh Armstrong from school 2 months before the murders. Now we know that the defense previously felt Josh was the one to have committed the murders, so Ms. Dayon was a part of the defense witness. She was the defense's witness. She testifies that Josh's appearance was disheveled, wearing extra clothing in the heat, and she even said that his eyes were in a daze, sort of like a glare. So Chris Collins asked about Armstrong's demeanor that day. He stated not the Josh that you knew 3 or 4 months ago? And she replied to that and said no. So basically just showing the changes she realized in him around that time. She was also asked about her relationship with Antonio Sr. by John Jordan, who had been the prosecutor. She states that he was pretty much like the man in her life, and just mainly spoke about Josh's relationship with his mother Dawn. The other witness called to the stand had been Kay Winston, who was Antonio Sr.'s mother. She spoke about her son as a child, his football career, his business, and stated that her, Dawn, AJ, and the family was so close. She said that they did everything together, and she even spoke on Josh being a good kid. She also spoke about Josh being in a dark space when he moved back, basically saying the same thing Antonio Sr.'s sister said, and Keyra. She was also asked to describe AJ, and I'm thinking that I'm going to go ahead and make a part 2 just because it's a lot of information, and each of the trials are like an hour and some minutes long, so I am going to go ahead, just so this is not an extra long video, I am going to go ahead and stop the video now and then pick up where we left off in the next one.